Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Ma Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Kauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Shunyavadi Paskatyade Satarine Shri Krishna Jai. I'll just Jayam Jayam Vishnupad Paramhangsa Brahmadakacharya Asadhara Satushi Shiman. His Divine Grace Shalasi Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hariva. Slava Zabrani Bhaktam. Slava Shri Guru Shri Gurangi. Om Agana Tivanandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vasakans Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapa Trivyasra Kripa Sindhuvyavacha Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranitinanda Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, Karma Yoga, text number 27. Prakrite Kriyamanani Gunai Karmani Sarvashaha Ahankara Vimudatma Kartahamiti Manyate Prakrite Kriyamanani Gunai Karmani Sarvashaha Ahankara Vimudatma Kartahamiti Manyate. Jai Kriyamanani Gunai Karmani Sarvashaha Ahankara Vimudatma Kartaham Itamanyate Prakrite of material nature. Kriyamanani, being done. Gunai, by the modes. Harmony, activities. Sarvashaha, all kinds of. Ahankara vimuda, bewildered by false ego. Atma, the spirit soul. Karta, doer. Aham, I. Iti, thus. Manyate, he thinks. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So please repeat. Spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego. Thinks himself the doer of activities that are actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. Purport: the two persons, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, they appear to be working on the same platform. But there's a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in Krishna consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently, and that is a symptom of his nescience. He does not know that the gross and subtle body is a creation of material nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as such his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna, in Krishna consciousness. The ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesh, or the master of the senses in the material body. For due to his long misuse of the senses and sense gratification, his fact should be bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relation with Krishna. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karamani sarvashaha ahankara vimutatma kartaham iti manyate. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself to be the doer of activities that in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Vrasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade Satarane. This is one of many similar verses in the Bhagavad Gita that tells us that we're not doing anything, although it appears to us that we're doing something. For instance, in the 13th chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Anadidvam nirgunadvat paramatmayam avyam sharira stopikanteya nakaroti nanolipite. That those who can see the eyes with eternity can see that the soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of material nature. Despite contact with the material body or Arjuna, the soul is neither doing anything nor is he entangled. So it appears that, according to that verse, although we're all transcendental and eternal, but we're actually beyond the material modes of nature, and although our consciousness is contact with the material body, we're not actually doing anything. Similarly, it says in the 5th chapter, Naiva kinchit karomiti yuktamanyate tattvavet Pashan Srinvan Srishang Jigran Ashnanga Chan Swapan Swasan Pralapan Shijangrinan and Mishanapi Indriyarni Arte Shoot Vartante Itidaryan. Naiva kinchit, not eva, not ever, not certainly actually. Naiva kinchit karo. Karo means to do. Iti, thus. Naiva kinchit karo iti yukta manyate tattvavit. One whose mind is connected to Krishna in devotional service, yukta manyate tattvavit. So when our minds are actually connected with Krishna, for the process of devotional service, then pashan shrinvan srishang jigran ashnanga chan swapan swasan. Although we may be seeing, or actually, naiva kinchit karomiti yuktam manyate tattvavit, pashan, to see, shrinvan, to hear, ashnan, to eat, jigran, to smell. Ashnan, pashan, srishan, jigran, grignan. Pashan, srivan, srishan. Srishan means to touch. Jigran, smelling. Ashnan, to eat. And gachan, to go about. Swapan means to dream. And swasa means to breathe. So although the person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in hearing, in seeing and hearing and touching and smelling, eating, moving about and breathing, sleeping and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while evacuating and receiving and opening and closing his eyes, he knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he's aloof from them. Now, we actually feel we're doing something, and that, it says, is due to the false ego. But then in the 18th chapter, Krishna says that there are 5 causes of the accomplishment of any kind of activity. Does anyone know what they are? Adishtanam tata karata, karnam chapritag vidan, vividas chapritag chesta, daivam chaivatma panchama. There are 5 kinds of causes. Adishtanam means the material body. Adishtanam tata kar. And then the soul is considered to be the doer. So first Krishna says we're not the doer, and then he says we're the doer. So he might be a little confused. After all, it's the end of the Bhagavad Gita, he might have gotten tired. So one time he says we're a karta hamiti manyate, and then he says we're the karta, we're the doer. So in what way are we the doer? Yeah, we can desire. Adishtanam tata karanam means the senses. Chag pritag vidam. Then there's the life air and the desires, or the life air. Karta, adishtanam tata karta, karanam chak pritag vidam, vividas chak pritag chesta, daivam, and then there's the super soul. So the soul desires, and Krishna senses the desire of the soul, just like one can understand the flavor of a flower by smelling it. And then according to what we deserve, Krishna has the material nature arrange itself in such a way as to fulfill our desire according to what we deserve. So the soul is entangled in material nature basically because of desire. Nadate kasitit papam, na papam sukritim vibhum, agyane navritam jnana, tena muyati jantava. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. In other words, desire, as Prabhupada writes in the purport, is a subtle kind of conditioning for the soul. There are two types of desire. There's desire for Krishna, and then desire for the sense gratification. They're both desires that are offered to us. The question is which one we choose. If we choose desire, when the desire for sense gratification comes by our consciousness, our mind, if we choose that one, then it covers our consciousness with one of the modes, because they're all colored by the modes. And if we choose the desire to serve Krishna, that's a spiritual desire. So it uncovers our consciousness. In any case, we're sitting there conscious of what the reactions of our activities are based upon our desire. If we desire Krishna, then we concentrate our minds upon Krishna. Then the result is we become ecstatic and we become uncovered and we understand things more clearly. If we desire the mode of goodness from the mode of passion or ignorance, then things get clearer also. But it's still a condition. Even in the mode of goodness, we identify ourselves with the body, because there's no pure goodness in the material world. Pure goodness is found in the spiritual consciousness, the spiritual platform. So any desire has its material, in the material world, is either goodness, passion, or ignorance. That's the definition of material desire. And Sattvam Rajas Tamayiti Guna Prakriti Sambhava Ivananti Mahabaho Dehe Dehinam Avyam. The material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, ignorance. And when the living entity comes in contact with these three modes, he becomes conditioned by them. So when the living entity gets attached to some thought that's going through his mind, thinks about it, but then it may go if he doesn't act on it. But if he thinks about it and then feels about it, then he's much more likely to desire that it be done. And when he wills something to be done, then Krishna may provide the situation that it actually gets done by the material nature. Or if he wills something to be done by the spiritual nature, then he's under Daivi Prakriti. And those activities are quite simple. First of all, some belief in Krishna, that he's doing it for Krishna. Avijananti mamuda manushim tanum ashrityam param bhavam ajananto mama buddha maheshwaram. That the fools, they deride at my descending in this human-like form. They don't know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all the big. So if one has no faith in Krishna, then he'll have to have faith in some mode of material nature. And therefore, moga shamoka karamano, moga jnana vicheta saha, rakshasi masarim chaiva, prakriti mohini pshita. Therefore, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their cultivation of knowledge will all be defeated. Why? Because everything they're doing will simply will result at the time of death. They'll think of something in the material world and therefore get that particular body. So paravas tavad avoda jato. Ivan, what's the verse before that? Before paravas tavad avoda jato. About that one should not. I wonder if in Bhagavad Gita has paravas tavad avoda jato. Index of verses quoted. Paravas, 275. Nunam pramate kurute vikarma idendriya pritya apnamoti nasaramanye yat atmano yam asanmati kleshada ashadeha. Nunam means indeed. Indeed pramatak. Indeed, one is considered pramatak, which is crazy. So we're all crazy. Sorry about that. The only difference between us and other crazy people is that we happen to be outside the insane asylum, and the other crazy people are inside the insane asylum. But basically, we're all crazy. Crazy because if we put on a hot costume for a party, for instance, we put on a costume of Frankenstein, does that mean we become Frankenstein? And if you put on a costume of Dracula, will you go into a party and start biting at everyone's neck at the party, thinking that you're Dracula? Or the good fairy? No. If one puts on a costume, then one should have the good sense to understand it's just a costume. I'm not the costume. But we put on this material body and we're walking around, I am this costume we put on. And we're convinced. And we act accordingly. Therefore, everyone is crazy. Nunam pramatak kurute vikarma. And one becomes even more crazy when he performs sinful activities. It's called vikarma. Because the aim of human life is to get out of the material concept of life. Instead of getting out of it, one by kurute vikarma, by performing sinful activities, one gets more entangled. The very hope for happiness and peace is spoiled by activities which are vikarma, sinful. Nunam pramata kurute vikarma. Yet indriya, what is considered to be sinful, yet indriya pritya aprinoti, to try to satisfy the senses. Trying to satisfy the senses just in themselves, without any reference to Krishna, is considered vikarma. It's not considered to be legal, and the material nature covers us accordingly. Nunak pramata krute vikarma, it indriya pritya aprinoti nesara manye. So Maharaj Shabde thinks that if you're actually a sadhu, you're a wise person, someone who's looking for eternity, to get out of the Bali concept of life, nesara manye yata atmano yam asannapi kleshada ashadeha. That one should know that this attempt to gratify the senses without any reference to Krishna consciousness is considered to be klesha, full of suffering. Asanapi asha deha. And the result will only be temporary. Only yehi samsparsha bhoga dukkha yona evate adyantavanta konteya na te shuramate buddha. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the senses, with their objects. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise person doesn't delight in them. We have to gratify the senses as much as necessary. As it says, one should eat to live, but one should not live to eat. That also should be done in Krishna consciousness. What's the verse that says eating should be done in Krishna consciousness? In Bhagavad Gita. Jagna Shishtashna Shanto Mujante Sarvakil Vishai Mujante Te Takam Papam Ye Pachanyat Makarana. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sin. because they eat food which is first offered to sacrifice. Those who don't offer such sacrifice, they're considered to verily eat only sin. Anad bhavati bhutani parjana anasanbhava jagna bhavati parjana jagna karma samudbhava jagna bravo vidi rakshana samudbhava tasmat sarvagatam jagna tasmat nitya jagna pratishtitam. That all living entities subsist on food grains which are produced by rain, and rain comes from the performance of sacrifice, and sacrifice is born out of man's prescribed duties. Prescribed duties are explained in the Vedas, and the Vedas come from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the all-pervading transcendence is situated in acts of sacrifice. Evam pravartitam chakram nanu vartiyati haya agayor indriyaramo mokam partha sajivati. A man who doesn't perform sacrifice, he verily only, actually, let's get to it. This is third chapter. Evam pravartitam chakram nanu vartiyati haya agayor indriyaramo mokam partha sajivati. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life, the cycle of sacrifices established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain. So people are trying to become happy by gratifying the senses, but actually all they're doing is achieving birth and death by such activities. That's all they're actually accomplishing. But yes, to atmati eva syat atmachitas shamanava atmaneva santushtas tasya karmanya vidyate. For one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, who's satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. In other words, the whole idea is to concentrate on Krishna. That's the only hope for getting out of the entanglement in material existence. And the only way to concentrate on Krishna is by performing activities in devotional service. Otherwise, as it says, the boat on the water is swept away by the strong wind. Does anyone know that verse? Indriyani hicharitam yanmanu navidiyate tadasya harati pragya vayor navam ivambasi. As the boat on the water is swept away by a strong wind, so even one of the roaming senses in which the mind becomes fixed can just carry away a man's intelligence. So our intelligence is so valuable to see things properly in Krishna consciousness, but as soon as we become attached to the objects of the senses, then Maya carries our intelligence away. And therefore we fall into the material conception of life. We're already in the material concept of life, but sometimes we become a little more Krishna conscious, a little bit more perceptive, and then Maya comes and offers us some attraction, and our intelligence gets swept away, just like a boat is swept away by a strong wind on the ocean. Therefore, nunam pramata karute vikarmat et indriya pritya aprinoti nisadamanye yatatmano yam asannapi kleshada ashadeha. So an intelligent person, he knows that this is a dangerous place to live in, that if our intelligence is taken away, we may be swept in 8,400,000 species of life. Therefore, paravas tavad aboda jata yavan kriyata yavani jignasita atmatadvam. That one is considered to be paravavas, defeated by the material nature. Paravas tavad aboda jata, by ignorance specifically. Aboda jata means by ignorance. Yavana jignasita atma Yavan kriyastadi Yavana jignasita atmatadvam. As long as one is not inquisitive about the absolute truth, as long as one is not thinking, what should I be doing for Krishna? who, or at least inquiring, who is Krishna? Who am I? What am I doing in this world? What am I supposed to be doing now? If one is not inquisitive about these things, then paravas tavata bodha jata. One is considered to be defeated by ignorance. Yavana jignasita atma tattvam, yavan kriyastab idam manovai. And when we're defeated by ignorance, when we're misled by ignorance, then the result is that our consciousness becomes covered. It's just like glass is there. If the glass is clear, you can see through it. But as soon as the glass gets covered, then everything appears to be the color of the glass. Similarly, when the modes of material nature cover our consciousness, then everything we see through those modes of material nature is a distortion of reality. The seer ourselves, we don't change because we have spiritual senses. And the material nature doesn't actually affect us, but affects our perception. And because our experience or our perception is effective on the gross and subtle platform, therefore our desires become distorted when we act accordingly. It's like at night we may dream that there's a tiger biting us. And we're screaming, please help me, there's a tiger. So someone may enter into our dream and kick the tiger. And we think, oh, you're my friend, you kicked the tiger. But our best friend is one who comes and shakes us and wakes us up. Then we realize there was no tiger. There was nothing to be afraid of. We were just dreaming that there was a tiger. So the material nature is composed in such a way is when we accept material existence as real and act accordingly, then material nature puts into the certain type of illusion where we actually believe what we're doing, actually we're entangled in material nature. And therefore we go through so many different dramas, either in the heavenly planets or in Ljubljana or in the hellish worlds, according to what desires we have. And our desires depend upon what? What's the most important aspect of how we acquire desire? Ananta. Yes. What's the verse in Bhagavad Gita? No, Purusha prakriti stoghi bhungte prakriti jangunan karna guna sangosya sad asad yoni janmisu. Thus living entities follow the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of material nature. This is due to their association of those three modes, and thus they meet with both good and evil amongst the various species. So according to who we're associating with, not only who, nowadays, we don't have to go out to a bar to get into the mode of ignorance. All you do is have to find the right channel on the internet, where they call the things on the internet, not channels, the website. All you do is have to find the website. Any website we look at will drag us into one of the modes of material nature if it's not connected with Krishna. So to fall into Maya is quite simple nowadays. Every advertisement, every association we have outside the devotees, every website, every music we're hearing, it's all just some mode of material nature that we become attracted to carry away our intelligence and put us into the material concept of life. Sat asat, and therefore something appears to be good and something appears bad, but it's all temporary. Sara asad yoni janmisu utkramantam sitim avati. Sharira yadavapnoti yas chapyu kramati shraha grihi vaitani samyati vayorgana ivashayat. Or the one before that. Mamai vangso jiva loke jiva buddhak sanatanam manakshastran indriyani prakriti stani karshate. Anyone know what that verse is? Mamai vangso. The living entities in the material world are my fragmental parts, and they're all eternal. But due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Shrira yadavapnoti yats chapu kriti shaha Vrihi Vaitani Samyati Vayor Ganda Ivashaya. The living entities carry their different conceptions of life from one body to another, like the air carries aroma, and thus they quit one kind of body and again take another one. So here it says that our consciousness, because the soul has consciousness. We have consciousness. We are just like the sun is one part, and it's diffusing the whole universe with sunlight. So the soul is in one part of the body and diffusing the whole body with its consciousness. Does anyone know that verse? So the living entities, let's see, Prakriti, this is chapter 15. Oh, actually it's 13. Prakasham. Yatha prakashya yekam kritstam lokimam ravi tata eva. Yatha prakashya yekam kritstam lokimam ravi tata eva chavishtam brahma sampajite tata. I got that one wrong. Yatha prakashya yekam kritstam lokimam ravi Kshetram Kshetri Tata Kritsam Prakashiti Bharata. Just like the sun is in one place and illuminates the whole universe by sunlight, so the soul, Kshetri Tata Kritsam, is in one part of the body and illuminates the entire body by with its consciousness. So we're illuminating this body with our consciousness, just like the sun is illuminating the universe. But the soul is, because of our consciousness, therefore we have, the consciousness, whatever is going on in the material world, whatever is happening in the material body, is not affecting the soul, but he's getting different experience because he's conscious of it. And because we're dreaming that we're this body, and that the things in relation to this body belong to us, because we're dreaming this material existence, our present existence. Dreaming in the sense, not that it's not real, but it's not us. It's all temporary. And if we have developed the right desire in Krishna consciousness, then we wake up, and then we see things as it is, as it really is. And if we don't, then we have all these different states of experience and goodness, passion, or ignorance. So that's up to the soul. What kind of experience he wants. Purusha, Prakriti, so he, or the living entity is carrying his different conceptions of life. Our consciousness is by nature pure, just like air is pure. But when air passes through a rose garden, it smells very sweet. The air doesn't become roses, but it carries the aroma of roses. But when the same air passes through a garbage, then it smells very foul. The air doesn't become garbage, but because it carries the smell of garbage, it appears to be like garbage. So similarly, the living entity, his consciousness, according to his association, becomes either sweet or foul or a combination of both, in between. But the soul is actually not, his consciousness is by nature pure, but due to association, it becomes adulterated. And because of that adulteration, what does it say in Bhagavad Gita? That he has different conceptions. When Arjuna asks Krishna, why does one not follow his duty? And Krishna says it's due to lust. And what does Krishna say about lust? How it covers the living entity? Dumena vriyate varniya. You know that verse? Dumena vriyate varniya, yatar darsho malena cha, yatar te nevitas karava, tatate me avritam. So what is Dumena vriyate varniya? What does Duma mean? Smoke, right. Dumena vriyate varniya. What is smoke covering? Fire. Oh, yeah. Dumena vriyate varniya, yatar darsho balena cha. Yatar darsha bulena cha. What is that part? Dumena rite vanir. Yatar darsha bulena cha. Yato garnarbitas tena. This is Abritam, yeah. So as far as covered by dust, as the mirror is covered by, as the fire is covered by smoke, as the mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is covered by different degrees of lust. Dumena briyate vanir, yatar darsho malena cha, tata tene vrita garavas, tata tene abritam. Let's see, so that's the man's pure consciousness is covered by his eternal form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Adrisha means a mirror, and malena is dust. And then Ito Bainavritas Garbhas, just like the embryo, Garbha is covered by the womb. Ubayena, I think, is the word. Ubayena, by the womb. So the living entity is covered by different degrees of lust. So according to how much lust we're covered by, we have different states of consciousness. Because the lust covers our consciousness, and therefore we're seeing through the lust, anger, greed, whatever manifestation of lust there is, and therefore we're seeing through that, and we believe it's real, and then we act accordingly. We respond. Because lust, abritam gyana etaina, gyanino nityavarina, karmarupena kuntiya, dusprena analena cha. There's a man's pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So, avriyatmika shakti and prakatmika shakti, which is the Dumena Vriyate Varni, is it Avarena Shakti or Prakatmika Shakti? Yes. Bingo. and Prakatmika Shakti, the impelling force of eternal nature, that's the Avritam Gyana Etena. It pushes us. Lust. We call it love, romance. We become attracted, and then we act according to it. We desire, actually, and therefore the material nature does the rest for us. We develop the thinking, then we feel deeply about it, and then we will, I have to do it. And then when Krishna senses that, and he arranges material nature to fulfill our desire. And then we become entangled. And what's the solution? Anyone know this is all doom and gloom? What's the solution at the end of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita? What do we have to do? First of all, we have to realize we're asleep. What's that verse? That there are two kinds of people in the material world, those who are awake and those who are asleep. What's the word for night in Sanskrit and day? What's that? Ya nisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagrati samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashuto mune. What is night for all sentient beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the night for the self-control is the time of awakening for all sentient beings. So I have to realize we're asleep and not become like the people we have to become awake, first of all, by realizing that we're asleep, and realizing that those who are asleep, they dream of sense gratification as being the source of happiness. And those who are awake, they dream of Krishna as being the source of happiness. They dream that if I perform devotional service, or they think if I perform devotional service, and I think about Krishna, I become absorbed in his name, form, quality, and pastimes, then I'm going to become happy. And those who are asleep, they think if I dream of sense gratification, making money, and enjoying my senses in different ways, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, then I'll become happy. And those who are awake, what do? What is the verse? Aporyamanam achala pratishtam samudram apa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantimat noti nakama kami. What does that mean? Person is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into an ocean which is always being filled, which is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So the whole thing is taking part in the mind. Where does Krishna say the mind can be your friend or your enemy? Udarat atmanatmanam atmanam avasadayat atmaiva yatmano bandura atmaiva yatma atmaiva ripar atmanaha bandura atmatmanas tasya yenatmaiva atmana jita anatmanas sushatrudve vartate atmaiva shatrudvat. A man has to elevate himself by his own mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a person, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor, all the same. So the ocean is the ocean of thinking about Krishna. If one is absorbed in thinking about Krishna, by hearing about Krishna, by chanting about Krishna, by remembering Krishna, then even though material thoughts may arise within one's mind, one does not take them seriously. And they come and they go. Just like a snake may appear on our path. If we try to run from the snake, it might bite us. If we try to grab the snake, it might bite us. If we simply stand there silently, and then the snake will simply slither by and disappear. So similarly, if we're not disturbed when the mind goes, boo, like, oh my God, my mind is saying boo. If we don't take it seriously, we remain aloof from it. When it offers us, some attractive, probably the worst thing for our mind is what? Is watching a movie. And there's, of course, a spiritual movie is not bad. That's good. Seeing Sita's wedding or Mahaprabhu, Neelachala Mahaprabhu. But seeing a sensuous movie will just completely bewilder us. Because it's very hard to get rid of it, movies. There's so many scenes going by, the mind just completely gets absorbed in movies as if they're actually real. The mind actually takes it as real, as an actual reality, and therefore the mind gets completely absorbed in it. It's very hard to get rid of it. It makes such an impression. Therefore, Prabhupada used to say, the devotees don't go to the movies. It's really contaminating. In any case, something comes and it goes. This is the platform of Nishta. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna comes up to the platform of Nishta, not completely free because there's thoughts that are going through the mind, but the soul has enough knowledge in Krishna consciousness, enough absorption in Krishna consciousness, he doesn't become distracted by these ideas. They come and go. And then he gradually comes to the platform of Ruchi, Vihaya Kamayak Sarvam Pumam Strarti Nispriha, Nirmamo Nirhankara Sashanti Madhigachiti. What does that mean? Vihaya Kaman. Vihaya means to give up. What does Kaman mean? What's that? Yeah, material desire. Vihaya Kaman Yak Sarvam Pumam Strarti Nispriha. Nispriha means the desire to become the proprietor, or all kinds of desires. Nispriha. Nirmamo, actually that's not, nothing is mine. Nispriha means just desires. Kaman means, it's interesting how Krishna divides up kama and nispriha in Bhagavad Gita. Kama means just gross sense gratification. And nispriha means desireless. So one who gets free from desire, vihaya kama, one who gives up all desires of sense gratification. So that's the pushing of the senses, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. And then there's nispriha, which is even more difficult to give up. Nispriha means the concoction of the mind For instance, there may be some demand for eating, but we can only eat so much. There may be some demand for sleeping, but there's only 24 hours a day we can sleep. But nispriha, the mind can come up with so many concoctions, desires, that can never be fulfilled. Even when we become a multi-billionaire, we still want more. There's no end to material desires that can be concocted. Therefore, vihaya kamayaksar pumam's charity. Charity means charity should be lives. Nispriha, who gives up all these mental concoctions, all these endless desires. Nirmamo, who doesn't think of himself a proprietor of anything. He knows everything belongs to Krishna, is meant for Krishna's service. Sarva karmi yukta ichitatev tata. Nirahankara. He knows he's Krishna's servant. And therefore, shantim adhigachati. He actually attains real peace. So this is a perfect platform of nishta. And then from there, Esha brahmistiti partha nainam prapi vimuyati sidvasam antakalepi brahmanirvana richati. That is the way of spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is never bewildered, being so situated, even at the hour of death, he can enter into the kingdom of God. What's so funny? Yes, exact quotes. Yeah, so if we have to at least come to the platform of nirmama, nirahankara, shanti madhigachi, of peace in Krishna consciousness. And for that we'll be tested. The whole material existence is a test. Sometimes we'll pass, sometimes we won't. But in any case, we have to keep on trying. And even if this lifetime we don't make it, we'll have enough experience so that we'll do better than we did in our last lifetime. And then finally we'll pass the test, we'll be on the platform of bhava, and then we'll be allowed to join Krishna in his pastimes in some place in the material world. All right. As the material desires we don't become attached to them, as we become attached to spiritual desires, then gradually Krishna dadami buddhi yogam tam, he'll give us the intelligence by which we're able to give up material existence, material desires, we won't be disturbed by our pushings of the senses or by the desires. We'll realize we're eternal. And instead we'll constantly engage in Krishna's service and constantly be thinking about Krishna by constantly doing what we're supposed to be doing. Hearing and chanting about Krishna, the 9 processes of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. Engaging. And then by doing so, we'll come into the spiritual energy. Daivi Yesha Gunamayi Mama Unana. Mahatmana Sumam Partha Daivi Prakriti Mashitya Bhajanti Ananya Manaso Gyak Babhuti Dem Aviyam. Those who are great souls are under the protection of the divine nature. They're fully engaged in devotional service because they know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as original and inexhaustible. Sadadam kirtayanto mam yatantas chadrida vrataha namasyantas chamam bhakta nituto pasade. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So our process is simple. We're so fortunate that somehow or another, even though we're asleep and dreaming, whatever else, still we have the great fortune that we're engaged in devotional service. We're chanting Krishna's glories. We have the opportunity to serve him. We have an opportunity to understand our insignificant nature as this tiny little soul, servant of Krishna and servant of his servants. We're so fortunate. And by doing so, we come into the spiritual energy and become liberated from this horrible material existence, this horrible dream or nightmare that we're situated in. So I'll stop there. Any questions? Does anyone know how many verses I quoted today? It was less than 700. Dharma Kshetre, Kuru Kshetre, Yes.
Hare Krishna. Is there anywhere explained why the material nature is made as it is?
Why is it made? Because we wanted it to be made like that.
Thank you.
Krishna is so kind. We requested it. We requested a land where we can imagine we're Romeo or Juliet, basically speaking. If not Romeo and Juliet, at least Tarzan and Jane. If not Tarzan and Jane, at least Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse. Pumsa Striya Maituni Bhavan Etam. That we have to feel ourselves to be either the supreme enjoyer and controller in this world, or at least a controller and enjoyer. So Krishna has given us this playground to live out our fantasies, that we're the Pumsa, we're the enjoyer, and we're the controller. And at the same time, Krishna comes and says that actually you should serve me rather than serve the material nature, and I'll protect you from all the problems of material existence if you take shelter of me rather than your imagination that you're the enjoyer and controller. We just have to develop the attitude of service to Krishna with what we have, and then Krishna will free us from these misconceptions, that we have this body, that we're the doer, that we're somehow or another something that we're not. And we'll realize that we're actually eternal spiritual soul who has the potential to be full of knowledge and bliss eternally in relation to Krishna. Anything? Thank you for the question. Any other questions or comments? Lako Noch. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada.